Hey there, and welcome to the first ever tutorial on this channel. Today we will make an animated progress bar together to get rid of these boring looking standard progress bars and polish your game to grab more attention of the players. So let's have a look what we have to do to get a nice result for an animated progress bar. First, we need to start by creating a simple but nice looking background for the progress bar. You can literally make any textures you like and fit your game for this, but so we can later change the length of the progress bar, the easiest way is to make 3 different textures. First, the beginning part of the background, then the middle part which needs to be perfectly symmetrical, and then the last part of the background. With those we can stretch the middle part to any specific length and still get the perfect background look. For my turn, I created these textures for the background using GoodNotes and Procreate that combined get us this look as a background stretched however we want it. Now let's jump into UEFN to make our UI with the background textures. In the content drawer, create a new widget blueprint and use the user widget since we don't want button interactions. Name it, for example, widget blueprint underscore player UI to keep everything organized. When opened, close this window first, then add a canvas panel to position our progress bar. For me, I want the progress bar to fill the upper part of the screen to show, for example, some rank progress or tycoon progress. So add an overlay and position it like you want. For this case, I want the anchors like this. Removing the offset gives the overlay the look we want, and also we want size to content to be true. Now let's import our background textures and save them in a textures folder. Now we want the textures to align like I told earlier, so we need them to stack horizontal, and for that we use a stack box. Like, I'm going to name it background, then I want the stack box to fill the whole overlay like this. Now add an image to our stack box and name it background underscore left and fill it with our first texture. I use 70 by 70 as size, and we want the horizontal alignment to be left and the vertical centered. Now duplicate this image and name it background underscore middle, and again put your middle texture in it. For the size, we want to use the same size as the previous texture, and for the horizontal alignment, put this to fill. Now one last time, we duplicate and change to our last texture with the same size and horizontal alignment to right. Now our background is complete, but still small, so you only need to change the size of the middle texture to fill, and now we have our background filling the desired place. As you can see now, our background adjusts just like we want when changing dimensions. With the offsets of the overlay, you can change the position a little bit. For the next step, we now need to create a material for the progress bar filling that is controllable by a progress value parameter, so we don't have to build the material from zero, which would take some time. We instead use the provided tutorial project from Epic. Under File, make a new project, then go to Feature Examples and select the user interface one. Name it, for example, I underscore template and open it. Now that we have a project with all these assets and materials from the template, we can close this project and go back to our island. Now you only need to find your Fortnite projects in your files by clicking on Project and then Show Project in Explorer. And there go back to Fortnite projects. In there, find the UI template we just created and open its content folder. Copy the UI folder and paste it in your current project's content folder. Now back in UEFN in your island, the UI folder should appear. First, I create another folder and name it Materials. Now go into the UI folder, then Materials, and right-click on the Progressbar Material Linear Advanced and create a material instance of it. Name it, for example, Material Instance underscore Green Progress. For better organization, I move this material instance to our earlier created materials folder by dragging it in there. Open the material instance and copy my adjustments or make it individual like you want it. We're going to check progress since this parameter will control the progress of the material. For testing, I will put the progress to 1. Then check all the corner radius options since we want the progress to be rounded. I change the radius of all corners to 0.8, and since we want the progress itself to be rounded as well, we check rounded progress also and change it to 1. Next, we want the background to disappear because we already created our own background. So we check the background opacity and put it to 0. For the fill color, we want to create a gradient between 2 colors to make it look more interesting. So check both color 1 and color 2, as well as the positions of the colors. For me, I changed the first color to the left, so position 0, and I want a darker green there. For the color on the right, so position 1, I want a perfect green. Then you only need to check bar gradient on and put a 0.5 as the value. And finally, we also don't want a stroke, so we change the opacity to 0 as well. Now, we have a working progress material, but to make it visually more attractive, we want to animate it with stripes going from left to right, like a loading bar. So the next step would be to adjust the material of the instance and add those moving stripes to it. So let's open the material in the UI folder again. Now add a texture coordinate node, plug it into a custom rotator node so we can rotate the stripes in an angle so they don't just go vertical. For the rotation center, add a vector2 constant and add the values 0.5 on both X and Y. Then for the rotation angle, get a constant and convert it into a parameter and name it to something like stripe angle. As default value, we want the stripes to be 45-degree rotated and as value range from 0 to 90. Then we want this constant to be normalized by dividing it by 90 and then multiply the normalized value by minus 0.25, which represents a 90-degree rotation to the right. Plug this one into the rotation angle. Then we want the stripes to move from left to right. And for that, we use a panner node. Add a constant node and again, turn it into a parameter and name it stripe speed. Default value, I will put to 0.1 and the value range from 0 to 1. This value we multiply by -1 to make it negative, and then we use an append node to turn it into a vector2. For the y value, we leave it as 0 and then plug this into the speed of the panner node. Now we need to mask out the R values to get only the horizontal gradient. To now turn all this into stripes, we use a sign node, and the peaks of the sign will represent the stripes. To control how many stripes will appear, we need to change the period of the sign, so we first add a multiply node and multiply by a constant value, which again we change to a parameter, and name it stripe count. So now we add the sign node with period 1, and then to isolate only the peaks we use a step node with the X value as the stripes and another constant as the Y value. By changing this Y value, we use more or less of the peaks from the sign node, so we control the width of the stripes appearing. Since when this value gets 1, the illusion breaks, we want to clip it between 0 and 0.99. Add another parameter with the name stripe width, and for default value I pick 0.4. Then we invert this value so higher numbers represent bigger widths with the 1 minus node, then multiply it by 0.99 and plug this one into the Y value of the step node. The last thing we want to control is the opacity of the stripes, so we just multiply it by another parameter called stripe opacity. So now when previewing this gives us the moving stripes as black and white, so we save this step as the stripe mask by adding a named reroute node. With the mask, we now can make the color by just getting the stripe mask value again and then multiplying it by a constant 3 vector, which we again turn into a parameter to control the color later. For default, I will put this to white, so 1, 1, 1. Now we have colored stripes, and save them again as a named reroute node called stripe color. For better organization, you can select everything we did now and press C for comment and name it stripes. Last thing is to add the stripes to the final color output, which we do by adding a lerp node right before the final color input. And plug in the lerp output from here to our lerp input A, and then we get both our reroute nodes, stripe color and stripe mask, and plug in the color to B and the mask to alpha. As you can see in the preview, we now have the final progress bar with stripes moving on it. Save everything, and let's go back to our material instance from earlier. Open it up, and in there we now have all the parameter we created at the bottom. You can change them how you like. For now, I only changed the stripe color to green. Now go back into the widget blueprint so we can add the progress bar to our background. In the overlay, add another image and name it progress. For horizontal alignment, put it on fill, and the vertical alignment to centered. Then for image size, in my case, I pick a value of 25. Then in padding from the left and right, we want it also to fit in the background. So I pick a value of 34 for both. Now add your created material instance of the progress material, and as you can see now, it fits our background value perfect, but the stripes are completely stretched. The reason for this is that our image of the material is stretched and not squared, so we need to adjust our rotation angle to something much lower. In my material instance, I check the angle and change it to a value of 1. Also, I want much more stripes to appear in the bar since it is pretty long, so I check the count and change it to 30. And also the width, I want a little bit wider, so I change it to 0.8. Back in the widget, you see it now looks perfectly fine. For fine tuning, we can add some text to our widget. For example, we add a % text. For that, add a text into our overlay and make it align to the right and centered, and add a padding to the right of 35. Change the text to something to compare like 50%. Then I will change the color to green and the font family to heading. There, I pick the 75 medium one and change the text size to 20. Further down, change the text justification to right, and that's it. Now I'll make a small example on how to use our widget and control it. To change the text and progress material, we will use verse fields. So go to the verse variables tab and add a new variable. We name it progress and change its type to float, since we want the progress to be represented with values from 0 to 1. Then add another variable called progress text and change its type to message. This we will use to display the percentage text. Now go to our progress text in the details and where you can change the text of it. Click this small icon next to it and there select our variable progress text. Then click on your progress image and open the view bindings. As you can see, the progress text we just binded will appear here. Add the progress image and get the brush of it. Then in conversion functions, pick the set scalar parameter 1. This will let us change a scalar parameter of the material of our image. So first make sure to type in the exact name of our parameter we want to change, which in this case is called progress if you remember correctly. And then we will link this value to our verse variable called progress as well. Last thing before we write a short verse script is I want to add another verse variable called show progress and make it from type logic so we can later simply show or hide the progress bar by changing this variable. Click on your overlay and as you can see it contains everything of our bar, so we can just hide or show this overlay. In view bindings, add this overlay and choose the visibility of it. Then in conversion functions, pick the toVisibility Boolean one, which lets us change the visibility by a logic variable, then connect the logic variable to our just created show progress variable. If true, we want it to be visible, and if false, we want it to be hidden. Now save everything, and let's add a new verse file to our project. We want to create a device that lets us represent the distance to a goal with our progress bar. You can pause the video and copy the code if you like, but I will not go in the details how it works since this tutorial is about the progress bar itself. Now we add everything in our project and then test it. Start by searching button in the Fortnite folder and place 2 of them in your world. We name them one start position and one end position and place them in some distance between them. Then we add a mutator zone and place it at the same location as the end position button. Now we only need to place our verse device in the world and connect all the 3 devices to it. Also, before launching the session, we want to place a HUD controller device and hide the HUD so nothing is in the way of our custom widget. Now, let's test everything and start a session. In the session, when I now go to the start button and start it, you will see the progress bar appear. When I move, it perfectly shows the progress to the distance to the end button, so it gets higher when closer and smaller when moving away. And also when I go close enough, it disappears, but when I go further away, it appears again, and all of this until I press the end button. Then it disappears forever as long as I don't start it again from the other button. That's it for this tutorial. I hope it helped you, and if you have any question, make sure to write them down in the comments. Also, when you want to see future tutorials on this channel, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Thank you very much. Let me know what tutorials you want to see next, and if I can do anything better in the tutorials. Till next time, and bye.